Imagine you've been taught your entire life that the enemy is a soulless monster, a barbarian, a gangster. Now imagine you are wounded, helpless, and completely at their mercy. You lie on a cot, your body on fire with fever, the sweet, sickly smell of your own rotting flesh filling your nostrils. You know they must cut off your leg to save you. You brace for the agony, for the cruelty you were promised. But instead of a saw, the monster offers you a miracle. June 17, 1944, a forgotten corner of North Africa. Inside a stifling American field hospital, Obergefreiter Klaus Bergmann knows he is going to lose his leg. He is 23 years old. The smell hits him first, a cloying, putrid sweetness that clings to the back of his throat. It's the smell of gangrene, the scent of his own flesh decaying. Shrapnel from an American shell had torn through his left thigh 3 days ago, and now the wound has turned a venomous shade of purple-black. Poisonous tendrils creep up his skin like dying vines. A fever rages behind his eyes, turning the canvas tent into a blurry, shimmering nightmare. But it is not the gangrene that truly terrifies him. It is the Americans. Since basic training, the propaganda had been relentless, hammered into his mind. Films depicted Americans as savages, torturing prisoners for sport, experimenting on the wounded for pleasure. His company commander's words echoed in his memory. If you are captured, expect no mercy from these cowboys and gangsters. Now, lying under the oppressive African sun, he can hear them. American voices drift through the canvas walls, casual laughter, someone whistling a jaunty tune, the sharp clatter of metal medical trays. It sounds so normal. He squeezes his eyes shut, trying to picture his sister, Maria, back in Stuttgart, her bright smile a world away. Will she ever know what became of him? The tent flap rustles open. Klaus's heart hammers against his ribs. This is it. He steels himself for the cold steel of the saw, for the brutal, unanesthetized amputation the films had promised. Through the feverish haze, he sees an American captain approach. A medical insignia is pinned to his collar. He's younger than Klaus expected, perhaps 30, with weary eyes that have seen too much suffering. The captain pulls up a metal stool, his gaze falling first to Klaus's grotesque wound, then to his face. And then he smiles. A tired, but genuine smile. "Rough break, soldier," the American says in broken, heavily accented German. "But we are going to try something new." Klaus doesn't comprehend. Something new? A new form of torture? He braces himself for the worst, but what was about to happen would shatter his entire world. Klaus had been captured in the swirling chaos of the American breakthrough near Kasserine Pass. His unit, or what was left of it, had been pinned down by a relentless tide of American armor for 16 agonizing hours. No food, no water, no ammunition. Only the merciless North African sun beating down and the ever-approaching thunder of Sherman tanks. The shrapnel found him in the final assault. One moment, he was crouched behind the skeletal remains of a half-track. The next, a white-hot nova of pain erupted in his thigh. He remembered staring down in disbelief at the sheer volume of blood, a torrent of crimson soaking his trousers, turning the desert sand black. His squadmates were already scrambling away, hands raised high, their voices hoarse from shouting, "Kamerad!" the universal plea of surrender. Klaus tried to stand. His leg folded beneath him like paper. He collapsed, his face smashing into sand that tasted of cordite and despair. "This is how I die," he thought, alone in this god-forsaken desert. But then, hands. Gentle hands were lifting him, not German hands. The uniform was the wrong color, American khaki. Klaus's throat was a desert of its own. He tried to speak, to explain, but no sound came out. "Easy, buddy. Easy. "We gotcha." The voice was calm, almost kind. He felt himself being hoisted onto a stretcher. Through a fog of pain, he saw an American medic, a boy no older than 20, wrapping his thigh with a practiced, efficient urgency. "Pressure here. Keep pressure here." The medic instructed his partner, then looked down at Klaus. "You're gonna be okay, Fritz. Just hang on." Fritz, the common, often derogatory, American nickname for German soldiers. But the way this boy said it, there was no venom, no hatred, just a tired, detached professionalism. Klaus had been braced for a bullet to the head or a rifle butt to the face. The horror stories from the Eastern Front were scripture. Wounded enemies were a liability. Instead, he received a shot of morphine that sent a blessed wave of warmth through his veins. Clean bandages. And water. Cool, life-giving water dribbled into his parched mouth. "Drink slow, slow, or you'll puke." The stretcher-bearers moved him through a landscape of organized chaos. American soldiers were everywhere, securing prisoners, shouting for medics, directing the mechanical ballet of jeeps and trucks. Klaus kept waiting for the blow that never came, for the cruelty he had been promised. Instead, he was loaded into an actual ambulance, a real vehicle, with red crosses painted on its sides. An American medic climbed in beside him. "What's your name, soldier?" Klaus blinked, the morphine clouding his thoughts. The medic was asking his name, as if he were a person, not just enemy casualty number 73. "Klaus," he managed to rasp. "Klaus Bergman. I'm Eddie Morrison from Philadelphia." The medic, Eddie, checked Klaus's bandages, expertly adjusting the tourniquet. "Hell of a day, huh, Klaus? Hell of a day." He said it so casually, as if they were two factory workers complaining about a long shift, not mortal enemies who had been trying to kill each other an hour before. The ambulance rattled over the rough terrain, and Klaus drifted in and out of consciousness. When he awoke, he was in the field hospital, and that's when he noticed his leg. The bandages were soaked through with a dark, foul-smelling fluid. And the smell. Dear God, that smell. Eddie was still there, somehow, sipping coffee from a tin cup. He saw Klaus was awake. "Hey, buddy, Doc's gonna look at you soon. You picked up an infection. Happens out here. Sand gets in everything." Infection. Klaus knew what that meant. He'd seen it on the Eastern Front. An infected wound meant only one thing: amputation. If you were lucky. If not, sepsis. And a slow, agonizing death. His hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Eddie noticed. Hey, look at me, Klaus. You're in good hands. Captain Bradley, he's our best surgeon. He'll fix you up." "Fix him up?" Klaus wanted to laugh, to scream. They were going to hack off his leg. He was 23 years old, and he was going to spend the rest of his life as a cripple, if he survived it all. And that was when Captain Bradley entered the tent. Captain Robert Bradley was not the brute Klaus had pictured. The doctor was tall but slender, with hands that seemed too delicate for a soldier, the hands of a pianist or a watchmaker. He wore wire-rimmed glasses that perpetually slid down his nose, and his face was a mask of calm focus. As he unwrapped Klaus's bandages with meticulous care, his expression remained impassive, betraying nothing. Klaus forced himself to look at the wound. It was worse, so much worse. The flesh around the shrapnel's entry point was blackened and dead. Angry streaks of red and purple radiated outward like a malevolent starburst. Even to his untrained eye, it was clear this was no simple infection. This was rot. This was gas gangrene. "How long has it been since the injury?" Bradley asked Eddie in English. 3 days, sir. Maybe 4. Bradley nodded slowly, a deep concentration on his face. He pressed gently on the tissue surrounding the wound. Klaus bit down on his lip to keep from screaming, a strangled gasp escaping instead. "I am sorry," Bradley said, switching to his accented but clear German. "I need to assess the damage." The doctor pulled up that same metal stool and looked directly into Klaus's eyes. There was no pity, no disgust. Just a cool, clinical assessment mixed with something else, something Klaus couldn't place. Concern. Klaus. That is your name, yes? Eddie told me. Klaus gave a weak nod. Klaus, I am going to be honest with you. This is very serious. The infection has progressed to gas gangrene. You have probably heard of it. Klaus had heard of it. On the frozen steppes of Russia, it was a death sentence, killing more soldiers than bullets. Standard treatment is amputation, Bradley continued, his voice steady. Above the knee, to ensure we get all the infected tissue. You would survive the surgery. We have good anesthesia, and our post-operation infection control has improved significantly. Klaus closed his eyes. There it was, the verdict he had been dreading. But Bradley's voice cut through his despair. Klaus's eyes snapped open. But I want to try something different. Something new. Bradley glanced at Eddie. Then his gaze returned to Klaus, holding him steady. There is a drug. It is called penicillin. Have you heard of it? Klaus shook his head, bewildered. It is an antibiotic. It kills bacteria. It has been used successfully on Allied soldiers with infections like yours. Not many times. The drug is very new. Very rare. We have extremely limited supplies. Bradley paused, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He took off his glasses, polished them on his shirt, and put them back on, a small, human, nervous gesture. Klaus, I need your consent. I can amputate right now. It is safe. It is proven. You will live. Or I can try the penicillin. It might work. It might save your leg. But it is experimental. And if it does not work, the gangrene will progress. We might lose the window for amputation. You could die. The tent fell silent. Suddenly, the only sounds were Klaus's own ragged breathing and the distant rumble of trucks. An American captain was asking him, a German prisoner, the enemy, for permission to use a rare experimental drug instead of just taking the leg and moving on. The logic of his world was fracturing. Why? Klaus managed, his voice a dry whisper. Why waste it on me? Captain Bradley looked genuinely surprised by the question, as if the answer were the most obvious thing in the world. You are my patient, he said simply. I am a doctor. You need treatment. Over the next 72 hours, Klaus Bergmann's entire reality was dismantled and rebuilt, piece by piece. The penicillin arrived in small, precious glass vials. Every 4 hours, a U.S. Army nurse, a calm, professional woman named Lieutenant Sarah Collins, would administer an injection into his hip. The needle burned going in, but Klaus barely noticed. He watched those little vials as if they contained liquid gold, for that is precisely what they were. The medic, Eddie, became a constant, friendly presence. He'd appear between his shifts, bringing Klaus fresh water or helping him with the K-rations that tasted like seasoned cardboard but filled the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. On the second day, Eddie brought something else, a Hershey's chocolate bar. My sister sent it, Eddie explained with a shrug, placing it on the small crate next to Klaus's cot. But you look like you need it more than me. Klaus stared at the brown and silver wrapper. American chocolate. He had been taught that Americans were decadent and soft, wasting resources on frivolous luxuries. Yet here was an American soldier, giving away a treasured gift from his sister to the enemy. Why? Klaus asked again. It seemed to be the only question his confused mind could form. Eddie leaned against a tent pole. My dad fought in the last war, got captured by the Germans in 1918, said they treated him decent, shared their food even though they were starving too. He always said, soldiers are just guys doing a job. The real enemies are the ones who start the wars. That night, Klaus couldn't sleep. Not from the pain. The penicillin was already working its magic, the inferno of his fever slowly receding, but from the sheer, overwhelming confusion. Everything he had been taught, everything he had believed about the enemy, was a lie. They weren't savages, they weren't torturers, they were just people. Captain Bradley checked on him twice a day, his face a careful mask of professional curiosity. On the third day, he brought another doctor, a full colonel, to examine Klaus's leg. "Remarkable," the colonel murmured in English, which Klaus was beginning to understand. "The necrosis has stopped spreading. The tissue looks viable." For the first time, Bradley allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. "The penicillin is working." The colonel glanced at Klaus, then pulled Bradley a few feet away. They spoke in low, urgent tones, but Klaus's ears, sharpened by fear and hope, caught fragments. "Extremely limited supplies. More wounded coming in from Sicily. American boys who need it." Bradley's response was quiet but firm, carrying across the tent. "He is my patient, sir. I started the treatment. We finish it." Klaus feigned sleep, his heart pounding. He had just overheard an American doctor arguing with a superior officer, risking his career to continue wasting a priceless medicine on a worthless German prisoner. Lieutenant Collins explained the situation to him on the 5th day as she changed his dressings. "The captain is taking some heat for treating you," she said softly. Her German was flawless. She had studied in Berlin before the war, she told him. "Some of the other officers believe the penicillin should be reserved for American casualties only." "They are right," Klaus said, and he meant it with a startling sincerity. "I am the enemy." Sarah Collins looked at him with steady, compassionate eyes that had seen too much death to waste time on politics or hatred. "You are a patient," she corrected him gently. "That is what Captain Bradley believes. That is what I believe. We took the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm, treat the sick. It does not say, except if they are German." She finished wrapping his leg. The wound was still a horrific sight, but for the first time, Klaus could see healthy pink tissue at the edges. The black rot was gone. The purple streaks were fading. "Besides," Sarah added with a wry smile, "if we only saved people we agreed with, we'd lose half our patients. You should hear some of the political arguments in the American ward." Klaus let out a short, sharp laugh. It felt alien and wonderful in his chest. A few days later, a young American soldier, barely 18, was rushed into the tent with a severe stomach wound. He was screaming, terrified, crying out for his mother. Klaus watched as Captain Bradley went to work on him, the same delicate hands moving, with the same focused intensity, the same unwavering determination. American soldier, German soldier, to Dr. Bradley, they were one and the same. The kid survived. 2 days later, conscious and sullen, he looked around the ward, and his eyes landed on Klaus. "That's a Jerry," the kid said to Eddie, his voice thick with accusation. "That's Klaus," Eddie corrected him calmly. "Captain Bradley saved his leg with penicillin, but he's a Jerry. He's also 23, from Stuttgart, has a little sister, and likes American chocolate," Eddie replied. "Sound familiar?" The young soldier fell silent. Later that evening, he asked Eddie to wheel his cot over to Klaus's side. "I'm Tommy," the American said awkwardly, "from Nebraska. Klaus, Stuttgart." They stared at each other for a long moment. Two enemy soldiers, broken by the same war, saved by the same doctor. "War is messed up, huh?" Tommy finally said. Klaus nodded. "Yeah, messed up." Tommy pulled out a crumpled copy of Asterix Life magazine. "Wanna see? Helps pass the time." They looked at pictures of American movie stars and pin-up girls. Tommy tried to explain the rules of baseball. Klaus tried to explain the rules of asterisk fussball. They laughed at their clumsy attempts to bridge the language gap, finding common ground in their shared complaints about the tasteless hospital food. 2 weeks ago, they would have shot each other without a second thought. Now they were trading stories about their hometowns. On Klaus's 10th day in the hospital, Captain Bradley came for his final examination. He declared the treatment a success, and Klaus well enough to be transferred to a formal prisoner of war camp. "You are going to have a limp for a while," Bradley said, probing the scarred tissue. "The muscle damage was significant, but you will walk. You will keep your leg." Klaus stared down at the scar, a nasty, puckered testament to his brush with death. But it was a scar, not a stump. I do not know how to thank you." Klaus stammered, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. Bradley was already packing his medical bag. "You can thank me by surviving this war, by going home to Stuttgart and seeing that sister of yours, and by remembering that enemies do not have to be monsters." He extended his hand. Klaus stared at it, dumbfounded. An American army captain was offering to shake hands with a German private. He took it, the grip firm and real. "Maybe after the war," Bradley added with a slight smile, "you can write to me. Let me know how the leg is doing. Professional interest, you understand." Klaus could only nod, not trusting his voice. Eddie drove him to the POW camp in an open-air jeep. As they rattled across the vast, sun-baked desert, Eddie chattered away about Philadelphia, about his neighborhood, about a cheesesteak place on South Street where he used to work. "You should come visit after this is all over," Eddie said. "I'll buy you a real cheesesteak, make up for all those K-rations." Klaus laughed, a genuine, full-throated laugh. "Philadelphia, I will remember." At the barbed wire gates of the camp, Eddie helped him down from the jeep. "Take care of yourself, Klaus." "You too, Eddie, don't get shot." "Do my best." Eddie grinned. Then his expression turned serious. "You know, my dad was right. You're just a guy. I'm just a guy. We should be drinking beer together, not shooting at each other." Klaus watched the jeep kick up a cloud of dust and disappear over the horizon. He was a prisoner, a defeated soldier facing an unknown future. But he had his leg, he had his life, and he had something more precious. Irrefutable proof that everything his government, his leaders, his entire world had told him about the enemy was a lie. What happened to Klaus Bergmann was not an isolated incident. It was, in its own way, official policy. In June 1942, the United States War Department issued explicit directives regarding the treatment of prisoners of war. The orders were crystal clear. All enemy prisoners would be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. Period. This wasn't born of naive idealism, but of strategic brilliance. Men like General George C. Marshall and General Dwight D. Eisenhower understood a fundamental truth that the Axis powers seemed to miss. How you treat a defeated enemy matters immensely. It mattered during the war, as word quickly spread among German troops that surrendering to the Americans was vastly preferable to being captured by the Soviets. And it would matter even more after the war, when America would need to turn former enemies into future allies. American military doctrine explicitly mandated medical care for all wounded personnel, regardless of their uniform. Field hospitals received supplies based on the total number of casualties, not their nationality. Surgeons like Captain Bradley took their Hippocratic oath with profound seriousness. The decision to use penicillin was more complex. By mid-1944, production was ramping up, but the drug was still a near miraculous and scarce resource, prioritized for Allied forces. Using it on an enemy POW was technically permissible, but widely discouraged. Captain Bradley's choice to treat Klaus was an act of personal courage, but it was a choice his command ultimately defended. His commander's official note on the report read simply, "Captain Bradley exercised medical judgment. The patient survived. Treatment successful." That dry, bureaucratic language masked something profound. The American military trusted its doctors to be doctors, not executioners. Klaus's shock was echoed in the diaries and letters of thousands of other German prisoners. The pattern was consistent. Initial terror, fueled by propaganda, gave way to stunned confusion, and then a gradual, dawning realization that the American way was not just humane, but often superior to the care in their own army. One German officer captured in Normandy wrote, "We were told the Americans are gangsters and savages. Instead, they share their rations. I cannot understand this. We are enemies, but they do not seem to hate us." This wasn't universal, of course. War is hell, and it breeds monstrous acts. But the official policy, the systematic approach, was one of decency. The numbers tell a story that propaganda never could. German prisoners in American custody, had a survival rate of over 99%. By contrast, nearly 60% of Soviet POWs in German hands perished. In the end, the United States held over 380,000 German prisoners in camps across America. They worked on farms and in factories. They were paid for their labor. They received medical care, and were housed in heated barracks. This was not altruism. It was the same cold, brilliant calculation that would later give birth to the Marshall Plan. America was already thinking about winning the peace, not just the war. Captain Bradley's decision to see Klaus as a patient, not a Jerry, was a reflection of values embedded deep within the American system, values that would have world-changing consequences. Klaus Bergmann was repatriated to Germany in January 1946. He walked off the ship in Bremerhaven on his own two legs, with a pronounced limp that would be his lifelong companion. Stuttgart was a ghost city, a landscape of rubble and sorrow. His family home was gone, but his sister, Maria, was alive. In a twist of fate that Klaus found darkly funny, she was working in a displaced persons camp, run by the American Red Cross. He showed her the scar and told her the story. Maria wept. "They saved you? The Americans saved you. They saved me." Klaus found work as a translator for the American occupation forces. In 1948, he wrote a letter. It took him 3 weeks to compose. "Dear Captain Bradley," it began, "you may not remember me. My name is Klaus Bergmann. You treated me for gangrene in North Africa, June 1944. You saved my leg with penicillin. I wanted you to know I am walking. I am working. I am alive because of you. You showed me that enemies can be human to each other. This is what we are building now in Germany. Thank you for seeing me as a person." The letter reached Bradley in Cincinnati, where he was now a civilian surgeon. He wrote back immediately. Thus began a correspondence that spanned decades. In 1968, Klaus saved enough money to fly to America. They met in Bradley's hospital office, 2 graying men in their 50s. "Dr. Bradley," Klaus said, extending his hand, "I came to say thank you." Bradley smiled. "Klaus, how is the leg?" He met Eddie Morrison, too, now a successful owner of 3 cheesesteak joints in Philadelphia. They hugged like long-lost brothers. "Told you I'd buy you a cheesesteak," Eddie boomed. And as they sat there, eating and laughing, 2 former enemies sharing a meal in peace, the absurdity and tragedy of war felt a universe away. Klaus's story was one of thousands. These former POWs who had witnessed American democracy and decency firsthand became crucial to rebuilding West Germany. They supported integration with the West, becoming a bulwark against Soviet influence. Former enemies became allies, a transformation made possible not just by treaties, but by countless individual acts of compassion. By 1955, West Germany had joined NATO. The peace had been won. Klaus dedicated his life to being a bridge between the 2 nations. He worked for the German-American Friendship Society, teaching English to a new generation of Germans. "I tell them about Captain Bradley," he said in a 1975 newspaper interview. "I tell them, the Americans could have let me die. Instead, they used their precious medicine to save an enemy. This is the kind of country America is. This is the kind of country we should strive to be." In 1994, at an event in Stuttgart, an American college student asked him a difficult question. "Do you think they would have done the same for a Japanese soldier?" Klaus paused, leaning on his cane. "I cannot speak to that. The Pacific War was different, more brutal. But I can say this: Captain Bradley did not save me because I was German. He saved me because I was a patient, and he was a doctor. He believed in something bigger than a flag." Dr. Robert Bradley passed away in 1996. Klaus flew to Cincinnati for the funeral. Standing by the graveside, he spoke briefly. 52 years ago, this man saved my leg. But more than that, he saved my soul. He showed me that enemies are not monsters. They are humans who can choose compassion. Klaus died peacefully in 2002. His daughter, sorting through his papers, found a diary entry from his final years. "My leg still hurts when it rains, but I am grateful for every step. Every step is a reminder. Americans treated me with dignity when they could have shown contempt. It is a debt I can never repay, but I have tried to live my life in a way that honors their choice." Klaus Bergmann's story is not about American perfection. It is about American ideals, the principle that even in the darkest hours of conflict, there are lines you do not cross, the understanding that how you treat a defeated enemy can shape the world for generations. Captain Bradley chose to see a patient, not a uniform. He chose to use penicillin. That choice, a single act of stubborn decency in a desert tent, saved a leg, a life, and in its own small way, helped build a new world from the ashes of the old. Every step Klaus took for the next 58 years was a testament to that choice, a quiet echo of humanity winning out against the roar of war.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.